没有啊，我给他带不回去了，知道不？我带不回去了，我带回去的是骨灰，不是一个完整的人。
I was shouting for help. Help me, help me. This is anti-Asian hate crime. Help me, please. Nobody helped me.
He came forward and slashed my face. Actually, it's from here to here. It was so scary.
我和我夫妻俩，我们夫妻俩40多年的感情，我们不离不弃的，走到哪都跟到哪，对不对？
In 2017, Zhang Qinggao and his wife Gu Yingma left their hometown in northeastern China and moved to Queens in New York, hoping for a better life, where they would have enough money to support their only son and grandchildren back home. They have known and loved each other since high school, until one day, a vicious attack tore them apart.
他还挺合人的，就是说家半拉邻居啊，大人孩子都挺喜欢他的，你知道不？他是一个很善良的一个人，没成想出现这样的事情。
In November, Gu Yingma was sweeping the footpath around an empty building near where she lives when a man approached her. Minutes later, she was lying unconscious with her head smashed in by a rock.
当时我看到警察给我照片的时候啊，我看到确认是我太太，我脑袋都嗡一下子，你知道吗？天都塌了似的。
Ma sustained serious brain injuries from the assault and battled for her life in hospital for months. In February, she briefly came out of a coma to see her husband one more time before passing away.
等那天我不上班了，我就跟姐过来给你洗洗澡啊，擦擦身上，听着没？手还往上抬，抬这，手抬这来。哎，很难过呀，不是说一般的难过，而是很难过，你知道不？因为我来的时候，我儿子就说的。 爸，你好好的给我妈带回来，是吧？我没有啊，我给她带不回去了，知道不？我带不回去了，我带回去的是骨灰，不是一个完整的人，知道吧？
The attack happened during a string of violent assaults targeting people of Asian descent across the US. They have been increasingly subjected to racist attacks since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic.
There's a lot of frustration, anger in this country. And since a pandemic, it's easy to, think about, well, it's their fault. It's like, it's Asian Americans' fault that right now we're in a pandemic, that right now we are not doing well.
The New York Police Department says there were 131 hate crimes targeting Asian Americans in the city last year. The NYPD has even dedicated a task force to investigate hate crimes, including Gu Yingma's.
我以前还真不曾想过什么歧视亚裔人呐，哈，美国人歧视亚裔人啊。但是通过这个事儿，我确实发现了，我们是亚裔人，那么美国确实歧视我们亚裔人。
Ma's attacker, 33-year-old Elisol Perez, was charged with assault and possession of a weapon, but not with a hate crime. The law requires explicit evidence, such as a racial slur, in order to prosecute such attacks as hate crimes. But for victims, it's not the only challenge.
A lot of us, English is not our first language. A challenge is if you were a victim of hate crime, you don't know English well. The people surrounding you don't know English well. And when the police, talks to you, they're like, what did they say to you? How are you supposed to express that if you don't know English well?
Potri Rancamanis is a Filipino nurse working in New York City. During the pandemic, she voluntarily distributed face masks to subway passengers to combat the rising COVID-19 cases. She says she was attacked by a couple because she looked Chinese.
Immediately, the man stood up and took the mask and throw it away and saying, "Mind your own business, chink. Go home to China, your dirty country." And he's about to grab my bag. But then there was a man behind him who pulled him. It's the woman who stood up and start punching me on my head and keep on neutering, keep on shouting, go home to China, your dirty country. Mind your own business, chink. Mind your own business, chink. She repeatedly say that slur.
Our community of more than 70,000 Filipinos in New York City, and along with our AAPI allies, have been dealing with two pandemics since March 2020, COVID-19 and the anti-Asian hate. And enough is enough.
62-year-old Noel Quintana is another Filipino-American who was the victim of a terrible assault last year while catching the subway in Brooklyn. There was a man standing next to him on the train who started kicking his tote bag. Quintana moved the bag in front of him so it wouldn't disturb the stranger.
When it's almost the next stop on the First Avenue, he kicked again my bag. And that's the time I said, "What's wrong with you?" And I moved in the train on the aisle away from him. And he came forward and slashed my face. Actually, it's from here to here. And I didn't feel it, actually. I didn't feel it. But when I saw the reaction of other people in front of me, they were so shocked. And that's I realized when I saw his hand holding a box knife. Oh my God, I told myself I was slashed. And I put my hand on it and full of blood. And the blood are all oozing up.
He stumbled off the train, bleeding. At the station, he was finally able to get help from a ticket booth attendant who called 911.
When nobody helped me, I thought that I would seek help from outside because I don't want to drag to another station bleeding without any help. And I was so scared that I might lose enough blood that I might die.
In the US, hate crimes against Asians increased by 339% last year compared to the year before, according to the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism. Hate crimes became even more rampant in major cities including New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. In New York, racist attacks against Asian Americans increased by 343% last year. And already this year, the NYPD has recorded 17 incidents of hate crime targeting people of Asian descent. But the victims and community organizers say the number of incidents is much higher than recorded by police.
There are other incidents of attacks, of hate crime that were reported. Why? Because some of members of our community are undocumented. So they're afraid that they will come out and report the incident, that their immigration status will be revealed.
Father Julian is the executive director at the Migrant Center of New York. He says he's been reassured by city officials that undocumented migrants should feel safe in reporting a crime. And local governments are now cooperating more with the community than ever before.
This is the first time that they are talking with us. But in the past, it was not easy to get the attention and support of the city government. We had rallies in the past when Noel Quintana was slashed in the face, but even with that, when we asked for support from him, for him rather, it was not easy.
Asian Americans are the fastest growing ethnic group in New York City, and in the face of a string of violence, they are feeling more united than ever. Father Julian is trying to rally Filipinos and other Asian groups and individuals to work together and also to learn how to defend themselves and each other.
We have trainings wherein we can intervene. There are trainings wherein we can defend ourselves, But I would say not everyone are afraid to help or intervene. I'm sure you've heard of that Korean lady in Queens who was stabbed, and a father and son came to her rescue, and they were also stabbed.
That father and son are Kazim and Louis Suljovic. On a Saturday night in March, Louis was working in his pizza restaurant in Queens in New York when he and his 68-year-old father witnessed an elderly woman being robbed outside. Louis and Kazim ran to her rescue without hesitation.
So fast, unexpected. I'm thinking there would, it's something you don't think. It's no time to think what you're going to do there. When you see some human being on the floor, I don't know, it's young or old, I have no clue, but 3 people dragging her, come on, man. And the heart doesn't let you go without doing something. My son came in, we started fighting with them.
Kazim was stabbed 9 times and his son Louis once in his back. Both suffered punctured lungs.
We chased them down and we came to them and confronted them. I asked them a few questions. The bigger one started to attack me. One of them drops a bag, and then a whole brawl ensued.
61-year-old Eun-hee Chung, whose bag was stolen, was also stabbed in the scuffle. Kazim and Louis have been hailed as heroes for saving Chung's life. Louis says it's not the first time he is witnessing such an attack, and the elderly are targeted the most.
They're softer targets, they're not going to fight back, and we can easily overpower them. Most of the time I've seen, it's more than time than not, that it's an older Asian male or female that are being attacked by much younger individuals.
Welcome to class. Thank you for coming. I know it's kind of intimidating coming to a self-defense class.
Martial arts instructor Sammy Yuan is now teaching free weekly self-defense classes for Asian American seniors.
Today's class is going to be based around avoidance and being more aware of their situation, but also how to react in an uncomfortable situation. And your first reaction to any kind of situation in life is usually determines the outcome. Drag. Left. Drag.
He works with students well into their 80s on striking and punching drills.
We had a student in her 80s tell us the other day that before she took our class, she was totally oblivious to people around her. People would bump into her, and she wouldn't even be aware of it really, or But now she's much more aware of her space, and she knows if people are too close to her personal space, and she'll move away and just maintain more safe distance from people.
But Sammy believes the most important part of his job is education among communities, so they can put an end to hatred once and for all.